So those are the things which will make things a little bit difficult. But then we work with the client saying it's not a yes or a no. It is, if it is not now, then when?
Yes.
It's not, no, you can't do it. It would probably be like, yes, George, we can't do it now. However, if we do these things over the next 3 months, 6 months,
Yes.
this is the next window of opportunities. So it's, for us, it's never a yes or a no. It is, if not now, when?
Absolutely. And it's that value piece, right? So it sounds like there's certainly that education piece or that takeaway for me, which I quite love, because it's not a hard no, it's not the end of a discussion, but it's more a case of some takeaways, maybe for me or the client in that scenario to implement, and then you revisit it at a point in time.
Welcome, folks, to another episode of Building Generational Wealth Through Strategic Property Investing. I'm your co-host, Sandeep Jagtap, Director at Finsos, and I've got with me here George Churchian, James Chase Buyers Advocacy, Founder and Managing Director. So happy New Year, George, and welcome to another year and another episode.
Happy New Year, Sandeep. Good to be back here with you. You're looking refreshed.
Matt, that break was so required.
Absolutely.
Recent holiday overseas with family was good. Good time to sit back and not only look at my professional situation, but also the personal goals and all. Help me understand where I have been, or am I on track, or do I need to recalibrate things? So that's been good, and it's been a record year for the business last year, and we have got so many happy customers. So we thank our clients for trusting us with their property journeys last year. And we collectively helped a number of clients acquire properties. So it's been a crazy year, crazy busy year. However, a great time to sit back, relax, do nothing for a few days, and take stock.
Certainly. So I'm going to ask you, Sandeep, did you get a chance to review your goals?
Yes, actually, very positive surprises there, no negative surprises. The business has done exceptionally well, which allows us to add a couple more people in the business, which will make sure that we can take on more and more clients and service the existing client base and retaining them and revisiting their portfolios a bit better. So that has been good on the business front. We have reset our goals. We sat down with our accountant and we sat down with that and with our current business over the 6 months and how it's going to annualize at the end of June and have some tax planning strategies in place. So we do that as clients of our accountants, of our financial planners too, saying this is going to be our tax position. What is that we need to do to save tax? So do proactive things, additional super contributions and whatnot, which will not only bump our super fund up to see whether we can acquire an asset in a self-managed super fund even early, however also save tax at the same time. So that has been what we have done. We sat down with likes of you guys, understanding if we have a bandwidth for another property and can property purchase be preponed as such. So keeping on track of our property investing journey. And thanks for sharing the thoughts on how we can progress and what are the opportunities. So that will be really good in a personal space too. How about yourself? How have you spent your Christmas and the New Year's, and what have you done with your planning?
So before I answer that question, I am actually just going to use this quick moment to do our standard disclaimer, if that's okay. So just, I guess anything that we do talk about or you hear us speaking about is purely based off personal experience. And ultimately, when you are making decisions, please be sure to consult with your financial advisor or other such professionals.
This is no financial advice. This is no financial planning advice. It is general discussion only.
Absolutely. So like yourself, Sandeep, it was a good time to sort of take stock, again, practice what we preach, review the goals, look at our progress, and then recalibrate for the year that we're now in, and ultimately set some actions and goals for us to tick off. But all in all, again, quite positive, headed in the right direction, working with yourself on a number of mutual clients, supporting them, and really looking forward to kicking some big goals. So I guess with that said, it's probably a good segue to last time when we spoke about goal setting, obviously setting goals, targets, reviewing our progress, recalibrating where needed. So we've done that now. So we're in the new year. We've got our plans for the year ahead. And the reality of it is, I guess those plans are all fantastic when it comes to acquisition. However, without the lending or the ability to access capital, you can't really make much progress, right? So Sandeep, I wanted to ask you, I guess, so I've set my goals. I pretend I'm an investor. I'm coming to you to have a conversation around this is what I want to do over the coming months. And I want to understand my capacity. What does that conversation look like?
Yeah, good question, George. And look, in our last episode, we discussed at the Christmas time, people sit down and take stock of their situation and recalibrate their goals and their next steps. Now, this is the time to set everything in action.
Yes.
That's where sitting down with us, we would review a client typical portfolio, saying what are the property values looking like, what are the current loans looking like, is there potential to borrow some more, add to the portfolio more, and are there different vehicles that can be used, the company trust lending, the self-managed super fund, can you buy another asset jointly or personally? So those are the things which we sit down with clients, even being a little bit creative with the existing properties to see whether a granny can be built at the back.
Yes, absolutely.
Which will improve the cash flow and also add value to the portfolio, right?
Certainly.
And that's where I think sitting down with clients and revisiting with their portfolio to see how the next step is looking like and setting them up for achieving what they intend to achieve by the end of the financial year, which is June. So a conversation will definitely revolve around the existing assets, existing situations, what has changed in lending,
yes,
and how is that affecting a particular client favorably or unfavorably. And if it's favorable, then how to take advantage of it. If it's unfavorable, then how to look at alternative options.
So can I dig into that some more, if I may? So in a scenario where a client comes to you, you've worked with them before, you've helped them buy their principal place of residence, and let's say they've got an investment and they come to you and say, Sandeep, we've sat down, we've reviewed our goals, we've been able to sort of save some money, the investment's performing well, the home loan's performing well. We want to understand, we think we can buy another property, another investment, but we want to understand our capacity financially. So what are some of the conversations there? What are some of the questions or things that you look at when you're trying to determine, can you actually do this right now?
Yes, good question, George. And we, in our business, we are a proactive mortgage broking practice. When I say we are a proactive mortgage broking practice, we have a dedicated client retention team. Mm-hmm. So with us, once George walks into our office, we help George buy the first property, that loan is done. We don't sit and forget it. Timely reviews are done on every client's assets, yes, files, which before the client walks into our office, we can see what is coming. So we do expect these questions. In fact, our retention team regularly sends an email to sort of trigger that discussion, saying, hey, this is what we purchased last year. This was the lending we secured. Currently, your interest rates are this. We've gone back to the lender and we have negotiated the rates for you. So you are in a good lending space at this moment. However, the property approximately has grown by this much. So there is opportunity to look for the next acquisition. Would you like us to book a meeting with Sandeep and he can advise you? Not only me, if they are a client of any of other brokers in our practice like Tejas and Nilima, they would probably book a meeting with them. And then that discussion will sort of progress from there, saying, hey, I received an email from you. At the same time, this was December. At December, we looked at these. We have readjusted our rents. I've received a pay rise as such.
Yes.
A bonus is coming in March. So I think our cash flow situation is really good. What do you suggest? And then we'll look into their typical borrowing capacity, assume what sort of rent would probably get in a certain area, and factoring that in, see whether they can buy our next property.
Yes.
Is there refinancing, extracting equity, and then buying the next one is a good option or not? Should they think of the self-managed super fund vehicle?
Yes.
One we are going to talk in our next episode. Or is there something in the company and trust? Or are those things performing well? Is there bandwidth there? Can we get some money out of the properties and invest more? Those are the things that will typically go into that meeting.
It's quite a holistic approach. And
Absolutely.
I like the proactive element of it as well. So I guess in that setting, let's say where, the conversation might not be as rosy, or if I'm a client, I might go in thinking I'm going to buy this next property now because things are going well. Then we might sit down, look at the financials, and you might say, George, it's probably not the right time. And there could be a non-starter there, right? Or a red flag or something like that. So what does that discussion look like? And, is there a takeaway for me to go and fix some things or make some changes to position me to then still achieve that goal?
Great question, George. And not all the discussions end up saying, yes, let's do this. We can do this.
Yeah.
There are certain meetings where things don't go to plan. Like we had planned something. Clients, when they sit down at December to take stock, they realize, we are deviated from our path a lot, or certain things in the employment have changed. Like you see a few different professions, like IT, for example, there is a employment freeze or something.
Sure.
People are finding it difficult to navigate between jobs.
Yes.
Those are the things which make a difference. And then the lending policies and the government policies make a difference too, where the company and trust lending, for example, or high risk lending,
Yes.
the over 6 DTI thing, which is coming up soon. So those are the things which will make things a little bit difficult. But then we work with the client saying it's not a yes or a no. It is, if it is not now, then when?
Yes.
It's not, no, you can't do it.
Yes.
It would probably be like, yes, George, we can't do it now. However, if we do these things over the next 3 months, 6 months,
Yes.
this is the next window of opportunity. So it's for us, it's never a yes or a no. It is, if not now, when?
Absolutely. And it's that value piece, right? So it sounds like there's certainly that education piece or that takeaway for me, which I quite love, because it's not a hard no, it's not the end of a discussion, but it's more a case of some takeaways, maybe for me or the client in that scenario to implement, and then you revisit it at a point in time. So in terms of preparing for this discussion, Sandeep, so if I'm, again, a prospective buyer, and again, with that scenario, I've got my home, you've previously helped me secure an investment property, I want to come and talk to you about the next one because I think the timing might be right. But how do I prepare for that discussion? What is it that you want to see sort of from your end that I enter the discussion with?
Fantastic question, George. And clients sit down at the end of December, they revisit their plan. Mind you, the original plan or the bigger goal setting has been done for the next 5 or 7 years.
Yes.
And we see how this year has been a part of that 5, 7 year, 10-year journey.
Yes.
Right? And if we are on track or off track. So that is first thing you need to realize. No. And whatever you think, generally write it down in numbers terms is really good.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure you keep handy any changes in your situation, like the income increases,
Yes.
any tax implications, any one-off tax things coming up, any shares that have gone up in value, which can be sort of sold and then thinking of investing into a property, or any other situation that
Yes.
has changed. Rents have increased. There has been some major works done at a property and whatnot. So keep those things ready. And then when we sit down, we plug in our side of the data where the property valuations, equity available, the lending possibilities. If not this, then what vehicle to borrow it under?
And I was smiling then because just hearing you talk about some of the prep work that you would expect that clients do for this discussion is very much aligned to our end of year review process, right? And our goal setting process, where we would be checking all those things. So a lot of that prep work for that discussion's already been done. So really you have a really good sense of whether you can go or no go. And then obviously sitting down with yourself, you'd apply a financial and a professional lens to that conversation.
Yeah, and likewise, George, we also work together with you guys, saying after we have a chat with our clients, we'll call our buyer's agents and we'll say, hey, this is what it looks like in the next 3 months. There's an opportunity to look for certain type of asset with certain sort of returns.
Yes.
And then you'd probably have your scope set up where you would definitely go and then start putting your plan into action.
Certainly. And obviously the finance piece does feed the acquisition. So like I was saying at the start, without one, you kind of don't go shopping if you don't have the funds, right? So ultimately for us, it's very much around once we know the borrowing capacity of the client and we know sort of their appetite, what they're comfortable with, we then get stuck into our own framework as well.
Great. So, George, once this financial health check is done, our financial plan is in action, then comes the most important, the shopping piece, shopping for the property. So, we are in January now. You've seen how 2025 has performed, how great it has been a year in terms of property investing. What do you see coming up in 2026? When I say what do you see coming up in 2026, what are the various markets where the real good value opportunities lie? And what are the areas which should do well in your eyes? Nothing is right or wrong. We're just making some predictions. I may be wrong. No pressure at all.
Absolutely. So, like any given year, the January period through to Australia Day is sort of quite slow. So, and that's expected. But then there's a bit of a backlog, and there's been people who have been holding properties over that Christmas period with the intention of now bringing to market. So we are expecting that there will be an uptick in supply come late January, early February. And
continue all the way till March, April?
So typically sort of right through to, until so the climate starts to sort of cool down. So maybe that sort of Easter period is what we would expect. Because again, there's been quite a long period where we've had limited supply. So ultimately, one would now expect that these vendors who do need to sell their assets will now bring them to market. So typically, sort of speaking, we're also expecting, as far as the rest of the year goes, just to see that continued pressure of the 5% deposit scheme that's being offered and supported and taken up by the first home buyers. So that had quite a significant impact on price pressures. Expect that to continue from my vantage point. In terms of markets that would grow, probably won't stray too far from some of the fundamentals, right? So from an investment perspective and from a philosophy standpoint, what we typically want is investment grade areas. So what makes an investment grade area? We want strong owner occupier appeal. We want investment from a local, state, federal government perspective. We want to see sort of high demand. And then from a exit perspective, does this asset and does this area appeal to a mum and dad home buyer? Do they want to live there? So a lot of the fundamentals will continue to hold true as they have for a very, very long time. So with that said, we're still expecting some strong growth through parts of Brisbane, which obviously sort of has been the case for quite some time. A lot of the conversation, again, is sort of, piggybacking off the back of the Olympics.
Yep.
And we expect that sort of growth in the greater Brisbane area to essentially have a ripple effect to some of the hubs. So places like your Toowoomba, your Moreton Bay region, we expect that to grow quite sort of significantly over the coming 12 months.
And a lot of infrastructure activity happening in Queensland because of the Olympics getting closer and closer now.
Absolutely. There has been for quite some time, and, the big push is on, certainly. So, some of that growth has certainly occurred, right? So we're not suddenly waiting for a tidal wave, but it's about that continued sustained growth as an option for us. We're seeing, we have seen for quite some time less activity and less interest from investors on Western Australia, South Australia. I expect that to continue. I think those price points are quite sort of mature at this point, is my personal belief. Though I know that there are still active investors entering those markets as we speak.
And to add to that, George, in Western Australia and South Australia, the amount of activity we have seen in terms of borrowers wanting to borrow and buy there it still continues. However, it's sort of fizzled a little bit, right?
It certainly has slowed down. Absolutely. So the attention is very much on the eastern seaboard. Victoria, again, is a strong market for investors.
Strong value buying in Victoria.
Very much so. Very much so. Because, you're a budget of sort of 700K, even sort of slightly more modest than that will get you into Melbourne, right? And there's no other capital city in the country where you get into a capital city market with a budget less than 700.
Not even a good property, even at Central Coast, is in the 800s and 900,000s
easily.
So Melbourne, if you can get something around that 650, 700 mark,
easily.
Great buy.
And in Sydney, we're talking about $1 million price point for apartments.
Oh, yes.
removed from the CBD location, so in the outer suburbs. So to your point, it's fantastic buying in Melbourne and Greater Victoria, of course, with a long-term view. And that's typically sort of what we want to encourage people that we're working with, is to have that long-term view, because we want to remove speculation as much as possible from the equation. We're not in the speculation space.
We don't want to be.
So I guess further to that, Central Coast you touched on, again, that's been sort of quite a tight market sort of towards the end of the year. We're expecting some more supply to come through. There's been price point pressure there in the markets that we're buying in. So whereas, 12 months ago, the 800K budget was getting us some really nice assets, and now we're looking at sort of, the 900K plus or minus range for
And that 800K has then passed on to the Hunter Valley and the Maitland regions there then.
That's right. So there's that ripple effect that we're seeing. They're different types of assets, and they may sort of have a slightly different or command a different strategy from the investor. But we expect that activity to continue. Again, purely from a affordability standpoint, they're good markets to enter. They tick the boxes from a growth standpoint and from a rental return perspective as well. They perform quite well.
Yeah. And George, even in Victoria, there are markets within that market. And they're definitely, I recall the time when the properties would sit on market for a long time in Victoria, and there's a lot of auctions happening in most of the properties you can see are of auctions at the moment in Victoria, and that is unheard of for some time.
Certainly. It's, Victoria is quite sort of auction, I guess, dominant. The other element too, I guess, is that dynamic and the buyer agent effect, right? So it's no secret that buyer's agency has become quite prevalent over the last several years. And the role of the sales agent is ultimately to get the best possible result for their vendors. And how do you do that? You create a competitive environment, and there's no better way to do that than an auction setting. So I think some of the areas that we are buying, we certainly avoid auctions because we don't want to enter that competitive environment. So for us, it's about sort of structuring and compelling offer, a strong offer that will entice them to try and secure the property before auctions.
And I think that's a good way to do it, because you just don't want to get into that competition if you can lock it in before by a real good offer.
Certainly, it certainly is. And especially when we're talking about investors, obviously, as we are, right? So we don't want to be buying in a hotly contested market, because we want numbers to make our decision. So there's no sort of emotional aspect to the decision-making element. And what that auction setting does is it puts you in the thick of the emotional element. So we want to sort of completely stay out of that setting as best we can.
Fantastic. And the mid-north coast or the northern coast in Queensland, what do you see? Is there still some activity there, or do you see still some value buying there?
I do. So we are working with investor clients who have the budget to enter Gold Coast markets, Greater Brisbane as well. There are some opportunities for dual income properties. We don't necessarily go fishing for them specifically, but as we sort of come across and we know clients who are sort of buying, regularly or actively, then we then present them with these opportunities as well. So there's still plenty of growth left within those inner city markets, especially where Gold Coast, Brisbane is concerned. We expect that to continue for quite some time.
Fantastic. And in Sydney, in terms of investing in Sydney, the western suburbs or the southwestern suburbs, the airport not too far away now, absolute crazy activity in those markets and some real good prospects there, right?
There are. So there's a mix of obviously the new supply, so the house and land sort of packages, and we typically avoid that under our model. Under our business model, we don't go near any of that. But when we're talking about existing established properties in established sort of markets surrounding that new airport precinct, we've seen an uptick for quite some time, to be honest. So over the last several years, those markets have steadily grown and grown and grown. And that will continue for quite some time. So those price points have elevated from a return perspective compared to the rest of Sydney. The rental yields are still quite good. But ultimately, when you are investing in Sydney, and I will call that Metro Sydney still, then you're not necessarily banking on the yield to make ends meet. It's more about a long-term growth approach.
Yeah, and George, you rightly said this, the price points have changed a lot, because it was not too long ago, we could buy a property in Penrith around that 750 mark. Now everything has gone past $1 million, really. Any old house with good land size.
It has. And certainly 12 months ago, 12 to 18 months ago, on a couple of occasions, we were able to secure a house and a granny flat option, so a dual income type property in the Greater Penrith area for the 1.1 range. But that's, those days are now gone. So the prices have certainly appreciated. And we expect that to continue.
And similar things you can see across the southwestern Sydney. There are a lot of suburbs there. A number of suburbs. They're not the ones where the new developments are coming up, but there are still suburbs with those old established properties. Still some real good opportunities as things are changing. The infrastructure build-up is going on a lot.
Yeah, I think so too. From a price point perspective, a more modest budget, I guess, will allow you to enter those markets in comparison to, let's say, the north or the east. And personally, I'm also watching some of the planning reforms that have already come into play. But as they mature and there are some more clarifications out, it will be interesting to see how the price points across Sydney expand even more, because ultimately the government is making these changes to planning to allow for increased density, almost at the dismay of certain councils. But ultimately, it's around how can we get more housing in a accelerated timeline. So some of these areas where there are opportunities to increase density, I'm quite interested to see how developers will respond to this framework, and will they re-enter the market? Because certainly from a development perspective, there hasn't been too much activity. But again, ultimately what that will do is apply some pressure to the price points and just bring them up again.
Yeah. So overall, it looks an exciting time again, as usual in property. Property never gets boring. I think property investing never gets boring, George. So when people have revisited their plans, have set in action their next 6-month activity, and you can see a lot of value buying opportunities.
Yeah, certainly. There always is, right? And it's about what we can identify and the value of the property to us. So when I look at a property, I might think, well, this is what I can do to it. And you might look at it from a different vantage point. So the value that we can see in a particular asset could be different and mean different things. And we could derive different outcomes. So certainly the opportunities are still there. It's about how creative we are with our investments. But as you said, it's a dynamic environment. It's always changing. It's about monitoring, responding, and then moving accordingly.
Fantastic. So George, hopefully our audience has got a little bit of insight on they've taken stock what to do next and how the next 6 months are looking like, and we are always there to help. We are already in the process of catching up with a few clients and revisiting their portfolios and revisiting their journey and their pathway going forward. So it's really, really exciting, and we can just think of only getting the market only getting exciting and only presenting opportunities and some real growth over the years to come.
Certainly. I think all things indicate for a strong 2026 in terms of the market. So for us, it's about, again, laying the foundation and the groundwork with people like yourselves and our client base to allow them to achieve their goals.
Fantastic. That brings us to a close of this episode. And next one, George, is an exciting one because we are getting a lot of feedback from our audience and they're liking what we are discussing here. We are talking simple language.
Yes.
And real small things that one needs to look at. So some good feedback. Thanks everyone for those feedbacks. And one of the requests has been around the self-managed super funds. So next episode, why don't we talk about the self-managed super fund and how to invest using that? We're definitely not going to provide any financial or accounting advice on that. However, how that vehicle looks like when it comes to investing through that.
I think that would be quite timely because I know we are both seeing and supporting clients doing a lot in that space. So I think just unpacking that a little bit and a look behind the curtain would be quite well.
Yeah, and look, that is one space, SMSFs is one space which has not been touched that much. So there's a lot of opportunity there, and that power of leveraging responsibly is very important, and those assets will always provide you real good opportunity to build real retirement income without really thinking of leaving the in the traditional industry super fund and taking control of it, taking responsibility of it, going through the compliant means and building a big asset.
Certainly, Sandeep. I look forward to getting stuck into that topic with you when we catch up next.
Thanks, George, and thanks everyone for tuning in. It has been great talking to you, George, as usual. And good way to start 2026. And this year, let's kick some more goals.
Look forward to it. Good to see you, Sandeep.
Thanks, George.
Thanks.
See you next time.